cultivated and planted and nurtured.
My name is of no consequence, and I am the last who remembers how each of us...
In 1960, cinema audiences travelled back in time with the time machine to London on New Year's Eve 1899, where fog clung to window panes and the tolling of distant clocks seemed to count down the moments of an era about to be torn apart. In a brightly lit Victorian house, a strange machine of brass and glass stood silently, as if waiting for the soul of the new century to awaken. None of the gentlemen at the dinner table knew that in just a few hours, George, the obsessive inventor, would break free from the flow of history to witness both the splendour and the decay of humanity. The time machine carried George across decades and centuries, from the first few minutes to World War I in 1917, when his house was abandoned, then onward to World War II in 1940, and a chaotic future in 1966 where London was devastated by nuclear bombs and volcanic lava. Finally, he stopped in the year 802-701 AD, witnessing the evolution of humanity into two opposing groups: the innocent Eloi living on the surface, and the ruthless Morlocks dwelling underground, preying on the Eloi. On this journey, George meets and befriends an Eloi girl named Weena. When saving her from the Morlocks, he is captured, but later fights back and lights a fire to drive off the predators, liberating the Eloi from their oppressive way of life. Yet behind the thin smoke of 19th century London, the film conceals a series of strange and daring truths, from apocalyptic scenes created from fermented oats to the tragic history of the famous time machine prop. And as you delve deeper into the behind the scenes, you'll see that this film not only travels through time, but also through ambition, reshaping the entire science fiction industry in Hollywood. Get ready to rewind to 1960 and discover 15 bizarre, fascinating, and nearly forgotten facts about this classic film. 15. Morlocks endured immense suffering. In the stifling darkness of the set, where temperatures seemed intent on burning everything alive. The first Morlocks were born not from a generous budget, but from scarcity and stubbornness. Hua Chang's cheap rubber masks began cracking at the first test of the lights, looking like diseased skin decomposing on its own. Bleached white nylon hair melted under the heat of the halogen lamps, turning the actors into creatures seemingly crawling out of a forgotten graveyard. And when their breath hit the rubber masks, producing involuntary hissing sounds, the sound team decided to keep them, for no artificial sound could be scarier than the real suffocation of humans trapped inside a fake skin. As filming progressed, the Morlocks became even more tragic than the scenes in which they appeared. Inside heavy fiberglass suits, soaked in sweat, the actors were almost completely blind due to glowing eyes powered by batteries hidden behind the masks. They groped through cramped spaces, heated to 50 degrees, stumbled against walls pulled. The wrong crew members burned themselves when the costumes accidentally caught fire in underground scenes. The groans of exhaustion, the hissing breaths, the smell of rubber and sweat merged like a cruel ritual, turning every fall or laboured breath into part of the final Morlock cries heard on screen. When the film was completed, the Morlocks appeared only for a few minutes, but the cost behind each moment was 12 hours a day of human beings transformed into monsters, not just by makeup, but by the harshness of the set itself. Hua Chang once said the Morlocks were his child. He could never heal, born of deprivation, nurtured by real sweat, and ending with a lingering obsession over a dark future that even the film crew had experienced firsthand. The time machine prop met a tragic fate. The time machine in the film, a creature of wood and brass, was born from the imagination and obsession of its creators. They spent weeks experimenting, failing and retrying, just to create something that carried both the romanticism of the Victorian era and the chilling unknown of a future no one had seen. The large disc at the back was hand-painted in layers so that when the studio lights swept across it, it shone like a dying sun. The plaque inscribed H. George Wells. A blend of author H. G. Wells and director George Powell served as a half-joking, half-serious confession. They knew they were touching a dream that was not entirely theirs. The seat, originally an old barber chair, was salvaged from a dilapidated shop, cleaned of every layer of oil, reupholstered, and transformed into the throne of one daring to challenge time. The control panel was assembled from radio parts, sewing machines, and antique clocks, with flickering bulbs that made the machine seem alive. Trembling and anxious about a journey it could not return from. Every curve of the body, every shiny brass plate was engraved as if they were sculpting the soul of a lone traveller. Audiences didn't just see it, they were drawn into it as if the machine could carry them through a lifetime in a single heartbeat. And then the prop itself met a tragic fate befitting its name. After filming, the machine was lost, dismantled and abandoned in MGM's storage like memories shredded and buried under dust. It was discovered in a tattered state, broken into pieces like a traveller, returning from a journey too long for human endurance. Fans restored it painstakingly, piecing together each fragment like reconstructing the heart of the past. Around 1970, a collector named Bob Burns found the machine in a warehouse in Orange County, California, and began meticulous restoration. Every part was studied, repaired, and repainted according to George Powell's original design. Even the illuminated control panel was recreated with vintage-style bulbs and switches, maintaining the look from the screen. Each detail was restored not just for aesthetics, but to preserve the original creative spirit. After restoration, the time machine became a living symbol among fans. It appeared at events, exhibitions, and film fan programs, attracting awe and nostalgia. Eventually, it was auctioned for a sum far below the legend it carried. A cruel injustice only time could impose. Today, the original and countless replicas live in the hearts of fans, proving that imagination can transform wood and brass into magic. Yet, alongside admiration comes a haunting whisper. If that machine could truly do what people believe, destroy it before it destroys its operator. For sometimes, the terrifying thing is not how far the future is, but the price of reaching for it. Interestingly, the time machine even made a cameo in Gremlins, visible in the background at an inventors convention, only to disappear after the gremlin eggs scene. Where it takes off from the screen and goes remains an unsolved mystery. The time machine lives not only in viewers' imagination, but as a cinematic character embodying craftsmanship, symbolism, and a touch of magic that few props can rival. Are you impressed by the time machine prop? Share your thoughts. 13. The film actually started in Japan. Few know that the time machine actually began in Japan. Before George Powell brought the project to Hollywood, he was approached by Shochiku Productions to make a Japanese film adaptation of the time travel story. Powell, with pioneering talent in stop-motion animation and experience producing sci-fi films like Destination Moon and When Worlds Collide, agreed. This promising idea quickly collapsed when producer Shiro Kido withdrew, leaving the project unfinished like a lightning strike across Powell's mind. But Powell did not give up. The failure in Japan sparked his determination. If the Japanese couldn't do it, Hollywood would witness a perfect version of the story. He quickly brought the project to England, worked with MGM, and turned the time machine into a vibrant, effects-filled, imaginative feature film. The initial ideas from Japan were not forgotten. Instead, they became the foundation for Powell's imagination, transforming failure into creative fuel. 12. Yvette Mimieux lied about her age to get the role. When George Powell began searching for the face of Weena, the primitive girl from a distant future, Rod Taylor's first choice was Shirley Knight. But unexpectedly, Yvette Mimieux, a 17-year-old with no professional acting experience, entered the audition and immediately captivated Powell with her natural innocence and clear-eyed gaze. Despite her lack of skill, Powell sensed something special in Mimieux and wanted to cast her. MGM initially refused, but Powell insisted, giving her further auditions and key scenes despite concerns over her age and experience. Mimieux even lied about her age, claiming 18 instead of 17, To be eligible, a risky but decisive move. From the first scenes, she struggled awkward, acting uncertain emotional expression. And Rod Taylor even worried that this weird hippie kid wouldn't fit with the scenes. But with each day on set, Mimieux grew rapidly. She learned repeated takes, improved skills, and gradually became Weena, a character carrying the breath of a distant, elusive world, yet vivid on screen. 11. The 29-day time travel race in London. More than a film. The Time Machine was a real-time race lasting just 29 days. While other films of the era could be shot over months, George Powell had to compress everything into an intense schedule where every minute was gold. Every shot, every movement of props was meticulously planned before the cameras rolled. Actors had no downtime between scenes. They trained, prepared, and were ready for dizzying transitions from the Victorian house to the futuristic Eloy world. When studio lights went out, they rushed to another set. A strict discipline stemming from Powell's animation experience where every second counted, knowing exactly what audiences would see or miss. Due to budget limits, Victorian London on screen was not filmed in London. It was recreated in 1960s California using paintings maps and highly detailed miniatures. One of the most impressive scenes showed lava engulfing London streets. Unable to use real lava, the crew ingeniously used heat-fermented oats, creating a thick red liquid flowing through the miniature streets. The smell was horrendous enough to make anyone grimace, but the result on screen was spectacular, vivid, and terrifying. Moreover, Powell recycled props and costumes from Forbidden Planet 1956, transforming reused items into his own unique vision of the future. Cast props and sets were coordinated with dizzying rhythm, giving the sense that the entire crew truly travelled through time with the audience. Every difficulty, every horrid smell, every fragmented shot contributed to a grand yet refined cinematic adventure. A race against time. When the screen darkened and cameras stopped, audiences saw not just a story but a triumph of extraordinary creativity and discipline. In 29 days, George Powell and his team turned constraints into art, transformed California into London, fermented oats into lava, and recreated a whole future world, all in a tense pace few films dared attempt. 10. The Time Machine had a sequel and many adaptations. In fact, The Time Machine had a sequel, though not a full feature film, but a short with Rod Taylor returning as George and Alan Young as David. This short appeared in a 1993 documentary, The Time Machine: The Journey Back, hosted by Taylor himself. The documentary not only showcased the Time Machine props, but included a fun segment with Michael J. Fox sharing his experience with the DeLorean in Back to the Future. The short sequel was set during World War I, with George visiting David before he went to the battlefield. In this emotional moment, George tried to convince his friend to return to the future, but David refused, while George appeared older, reflecting the long life he had lived with Weena in the future. The documentary and accompanying short were warmly received, even winning a Saturn Award, opening a small but touching bridge between the past and future of the original story. Additionally, The Time Machine inspired many later adaptations. In 1978, a TV movie based on the story was set in 1970s Los Angeles, and though now nearly forgotten, it was an effort to bring the story to contemporary audiences. A year later, Time After Time 1979 was released, depicting H.G. Wells travelling from the 1800s to 1970 to pursue Jack the Ripper. An intriguing but completely different take from the original. In 2002, a more faithful cinematic remake emerged, with the protagonist named Alexander, played by Guy Pearce, directed by Simon Wells, H.G. Wells's great-grandson. This version added personal tragedy. Alexander travelled through time to save a murdered love, and then explored why the past couldn't be changed. Despite efforts, the remake received mixed reviews, performed moderately at the box office, and was quickly forgotten. Regardless, the 1960 original still holds a special place in audiences' hearts. How many times have you watched the original film? Share your thoughts. 9. Tom Thumb saved the project. When George Powell brought the Time Machine project to Hollywood, most studios shook their heads. No one wanted to invest in a science fiction film they considered risky. But Powell still had an ace up his sleeve, the fantasy film Tom Thumb, that he directed for MGM's British branch in 1958. Tom Thumb not only succeeded at the box office, but also proved that Powell could handle complex special effects, create a vivid fantasy world, and manage a large-scale project on a limited budget. This success convinced MGM Britain to trust him, greenlighting the Time Machine, and giving Powell the opportunity to turn his time travel dream into reality. Thanks to MGM Britain's support, a production budget of around $820,000 was allocated enough for Powell to build impressive sets, create the iconic Time Machine, and bring the terrifying Morlocks to life. Although the story takes place in London, filming in England was too expensive, so Powell moved the entire shoot to MGM Studios in California. From meticulously recreated Victorian streets to lighting, fog, and special effects, Powell transformed an American studio into a vivid 19th century London. 8. Lava was oatmeal. When London was swallowed by rivers of glowing red lava, audiences believed they were witnessing a true apocalypse. But behind the camera, that molten rock was just a pot of rotting oatmeal bubbling under the heat of studio lights. The effects team mixed cooked oats with red dye bleach and crushed clay to thicken it, then let it ferment for several days to produce gas bubbles that puffed like living creatures. The smell was horrendous, like a burnt, forgotten hotel breakfast. But every time it bubbled under the golden lights, the crew knew they had created something terrifying enough to fool the world. The scene had to be shot in a very short time. The lights heated the lava, changing its colour and starting decomposition. It dried at the edges, swelled in the middle, and formed scum at the bottom, like a lye rotting from within. When the thick red mixture flowed over the plaster London model, it clung to every crack, collapsed in sections, making the miniature city seem to burn alive. No one would guess that this epic geological disaster originated from the cheapest breakfast Hollywood ever used. 7. The Oscar-winning illusion moment. The most astonishing moment in the film is the rapid passage of time where centuries appear before the viewer in just seconds. George Powell and his effects team transformed the screen into a visual time machine using every available cinematic trick. Stop-motion animation, multiple exposures, miniature sets and sophisticated lighting. Flowers bloomed and withered. Mannequins changed costumes. Sunlight slid across the study windows, and every tiny detail was captured over thousands of frames with minimal change between each shot. Even the clouds drifting across the sky were handmade milk poured into a water tank and filmed in slow motion, creating a floating, lifelike effect. The result was a scene audiences had never seen, where time existed as a tangible force capable of crushing generation styles and humanity itself. This extraordinary creativity earned the film the 1961 Oscar for Best Special Effects, marking a breakthrough in cinema history. Artists like Gene Warren and Tim Barr elevated handcrafted effects to an art form, turning classic techniques into a vivid, almost magical visual experience. 6. Audiences were fooled with stagecraft. The Time Machine's giant spinning disc, flickering lights and shimmering effects, seemingly modern, were in fact sophisticated stagecraft. Beneath the seat, a small motor spun the disc, while electricians manually controlled each coloured bulb via a hidden switchboard. Smoke machines fans and real-time exposure adjustments created the illusion of the machine travelling centuries in seconds. Combined with subtle sound-ticking clocks, murmurs, whistling wind, the audience was mesmerised, feeling as if they were truly travelling through time. The remarkable part was that everything the audience saw was mechanical magic. No advanced technology, only perfect synchronization of timing, lighting, and the filmmaker's imagination. Every detail from the disc's movement to the rhythm of the sound was calculated to create a realistic yet magical effect. Viewers believed they were witnessing a futuristic invention, while in reality, it was all human ingenuity. 5. Why Taylor was cast as George. The time traveller in the time machine was named H. George Wells, a subtle nod to H.G. Wells, the author of the original story, and also a reference to George Powell, the film's director and producer. This naming was both an homage and a clever link between the writer and the person bringing the time travel dream to life on screen. Originally, Powell imagined George as a middle-aged gentleman and considered veteran actors like David Niven or James Mason. However, he ultimately chose Rod Taylor, a young Australian actor, handsome and energetic. Taylor's confident appearance and solid presence gave George youthful vitality, action energy, and a desire to explore the future very different from the middle-aged gentleman Powell had initially envisioned. The decision emerged from multiple lunches between Taylor and Powell, where they reviewed storyboard sketches and discussed the film's vision. Taylor quickly became captivated and passionate about the project, transforming George from a paper concept into a living character, symbolizing curiosity and adventure across time. This role later became the one Taylor was most frequently asked about in his career, confirming the enduring life of the character in audiences' hearts. Are you impressed by Taylor's performance in the film? Share your thoughts. 4. The film was harshly criticised at release. When the film premiered in 1960, it did not immediately win universal praise. Many contemporary reviews considered it clunky and slightly pretentious. The New York Times praised the concept, but noted the film felt old-fashioned and slow, while Variety appreciated the special effects and Rod Taylor's acting, but found the pacing sluggish and lacking energy. Even The New Yorker criticised the adaptation of H.G. Wells's short story, calling it simple but poorly executed. Despite such mixed reviews, the film achieved significant financial success. With a budget of around $820,000, it earned approximately $2.6 million, equivalent to $28 million today. These numbers brought MGM impressive profits, proving the allure of time travel stories and their ability to attract audiences even when critics were cautious. In terms of influence, the Time Machine quickly became a sci-fi icon. Elements such as the Time Machine, the Morlocks, and Eloy and George Powell's storytelling style inspired generations of viewers. Once criticised, the Time Machine is now an immortal symbol of science fiction, demonstrating that the true value of art is sometimes only recognised over time. What do you think about these praises and criticisms? Share your thoughts. 3. The hidden message of the Cold War. Beneath the shimmering lights of the spinning disc and the changing colour gels, the film unexpectedly revealed a dark abyss that 1960 audiences could not avoid. When the machine stops in 1966 and London explodes in a nuclear storm, viewers are violently pulled from the Victorian fantasy world into the very fears they were living the real prospect of the Cold War. The scene was brief, but every alarm sound from the Forbidden Planet sound library, every flickering light, and every dense smoke effect created by Powell hammered into the collective anxiety of the era. The film reminded audiences that human progress could also be a plunge into the abyss, that the future trembles like a rope stretched under the weight of human ambition. Meanwhile, Victorian London, the starting point of the journey, was a beautiful illusion, created in the blazing Los Angeles sun. The entire historic street was just a backyard at MGM in Culver City, where cobblestone streets lit shop windows and gas lamps were recycled from countless period sets. Old walls were repainted, signage renewed, and fog was created with dry ice over mirrors placed strategically to deceive the eye. The city's horizon was extended with faded paintings masking the studio's edge. Even the tram crossing the street was a prop with a British sign added. From these fragments, Powell built a London thousands of miles away, which when appearing on screen looked strikingly alive and convincing, too. The apple tree growing and sprouting leaves. Beneath the illusion of rapidly passing time, the apple tree growing and sprouting leaves in. The time machine was not a natural time-lapse shot, but the painstaking work of artist Bill Brace. He placed a painted glass pane in front of the camera, adding details bit by bit, a new leaf, a longer branch, shifting shadows, and shot each step frame by frame. When played back, these silent brushstrokes sprang to life, transforming the tree's life cycle into a supernatural acceleration, making viewers feel as if time itself had compressed into seconds. No digital effects, no modern machinery, just patience, an artist's hand, and an understanding of how the human eye is tricked. This brutally simple technique created the power of the scene, a moment of time, rising from pure art haunting audiences for decades as proof of the golden age of handcrafted effects. 1. A museum that speaks. The future museum in the time machine becomes eerily overwhelming when George accidentally activates the talking rings, slowly rotating. Metal rings emitting steady voices recounting humanity's decay. This was not from the novel, but a creation of George Powell, who wanted a visual symbol crueler and colder than any rotting book. He wanted history to become something dead, echoing only as a dry message, a distant voice from a civilization that had destroyed itself. The rings were actually plastic, coated with metallic powder placed on a lighted table, and filmed using a rudimentary mechanical device, while a voice actor, uncredited, provided the audio, giving the impression of a ghostly memory speaking. The simplicity of the effect made it even stronger. Faint light, monotone sound, no climax, no emotion. What we hear is not the living narrating, but a relic of a desperate past trying to transmit its final remnants. And so, after tracing each mystery, each scene, each behind-the-scenes story, hidden for over half a century, The Time Machine emerges not only as a science fiction film, but as a memory machine where the sweat, audacity and imagination of a generation of artists are pressed into light. These handcrafted effects, seemingly crude, carry an enduring vitality capable of lasting decades, enough to make us shiver today at the journey through the dark future that George Powell and his team envisioned. So what about you? Do you love this film? Among all the strange, painful, beautiful and haunting facts surrounding the time machine, which detail can you never forget? Share your thoughts below. Thank you for staying until the very end of this journey. If you wish to continue exploring other cinematic adventures through history, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.